Okay, welcome to today's live stream. We're going to be talking about the Mac Ultra, which my Ultra finally arrived. It only took between 12 and 13 weeks to get here. And if you've been watching any of the streams before this, you'll have seen that I was using the Mac Studio Max. And that computer was such a beast. It was pretty cool. But I'm really happy now to be able to do the comparison with the Ultra to see just what the differences are. I've got the 2 terabyte drive, but other than that, it's just the base Ultra model. So I didn't get any more of the RAM or anything else like that. Uh, but still, the Ultra in its base model is pretty beastly. And I've already been noticing some things that are pretty incredible. And I really feel like this is going to be the beginning of a couple years of not having to think about a new computer for a little while, which is kind of nice. You can see here with my performance meter there's a lot of threads happening. I'm still recustomizing a lot of stuff back to how it normally would be. So let me, as I'm coming along here, let me change a few things just so that I'm just continuing to set it up. This, though, is really snappy. And I'm just so impressed with how everything has been working, and I think that any of you who are thinking about this are certainly gonna find that this is just gonna make you want one even more. So immersive in the comments, how long did it take to arrive? It would have been 13 weeks on Friday, and so we're looking at 12 and a half weeks it took to arrive. So a long time. I mean, we ordered it in May. It's here, getting close to September. So, and the times have just gotten longer to do any sort of customization on the Ultras. It certainly hasn't gotten any shorter, that's for sure. Okay, so one of the questions I'm always getting is about using this with orchestral stuff. And one of the tests that I was interested in was with the East-West. I use the East-West stuff. I stopped my Composer Cloud subscription this year just because I knew that I was going to be not doing any projects with it. And then I also knew that I was going to be, getting this new computer which could handle it. And boy, I think it's going to be time to go back and use the Composer Cloud a little bit more. I have a bunch of stuff with it from East-West already, the Hollywood strings and the original orchestral bundle and a bunch of other instruments. And so I will probably at some point, be able to go back and do the full thing. But just today, just let me give you a little sense of some of my initial reactions. So I got it yesterday, and I just started everything downloading. I've got all of my plugins, I think, reinstalled. I've already been working on the M1 architecture since the Mac Mini came out. And so none of that was a surprise. Everything, I already knew which things worked and which ones didn't, so I didn't have to experiment a lot. But I've got, right now, this is the old East-West plugin, which is the one I've been using still. I'm not up on Opus right this moment because that's really the Composer Cloud, but I'm using the Play engine. And I just put in, right now I've got 7 of these banks loaded. Full string patch, one of the pianos, and then a brass section with one bassoon. I just was adding things in before the stream. And each of the brass instruments are the full key switched instruments. So it's not just, so for instance with trombone, it's not just a single instrument. It's all of these instruments. Right, so it's like the full key switch instrument. loaded in. So and let me know in the chat if you can actually hear. I think you can hear the instruments, but just double check that. This is still Rosetta. I have to use Rosetta because there's a few plugins which I use which only work with Rosetta still. Even though a number of the ones have been switching over, I'm still on Rosetta. So imagine what you could do if all of these were switched over. But so these are all 7 of these instruments, small ensemble still. This is not a big ensemble, but I put them all into a track stack. And transposed a few of them so they would all be in the right octave. Play on the keyboard, everything just loads up like so quick, everything triggers. Don't have any drop notes. These tracks below have the play instrument on there as well, but they're deactivated until I load them up. So I'm just going to load up another instrument here. And for this one, we'll just load up another woodwind instrument, key switch. I'll throw this on, replace the patch that's in there. I mean, it loads up pretty fast, even for a key switch. And then let me transpose this so it works with all the other instruments. Drop that in here. Just name it so I remember what I'm doing. And so these are all like live inputs. Let's really quickly record something. Right, something simple. And then I'm just gonna, put this down on one of the other tracks, and we'll play this back. Look at all the performance meter here. I mean, we could build and build and build with all of these instruments. I mean, this is as good as I've ever seen a box straight out of or a computer straight out of the box. Just, playing all of this stuff. It works so seamlessly, so smooth. There's so much power. It's so snappy to load up full instruments. I mean, it's pretty incredible what you can do with this. And I had to change like the buffer size or something with the 7 that I had loaded originally, and I switched it, hit apply, and it was like 1,000, 2, 1,000, done. And I don't want to switch it right now because I'm streaming and it could mess it all up, but it's just so quick and snappy. So let me look at the comments for a second. Jerome, no, I don't have one on the customization. I have a lot of videos on things that I have customized over the years, but I don't have any videos on the specifics. And then yes, with Rosetta. Thanks, multi-musician, for saying you can hear everything. Okay, cool. Caught up. So super snappy. I wish everything was universal and would just work without it, but even with the Rosetta engaged, I mean, this thing is a beast and just powers through. Is this overkill? Probably. And I only say that because I've been using the Mac Studio Max for the past couple weeks. And I think I've got it. This one's sitting right here still. And it was really good. It was really powerful. And for the reality of what I need the Ultra for is different than maybe a lot of others. I do a lot of 360 research. And so I'm going to be using this with various 3D modeling software packages and gaming design packages and Final Cut Pro and things like that. And so I needed the Ultra for some other things, but it's great to be able to have it here with this too. And I mean, full disclosure, since I installed everything, Logic has crashed on me once, which is one more time than it has crashed on me in the past 6 months. It hardly ever crashes the way I use it, even though I often will have big sessions and complex songs and things. It just, I don't try to use a lot of third-party things that I know make it less stable. And as a software package without all the third-party things, it's really stable. And so I just loaded up right before the live stream. Actually, I was just doing stuff in Logic, and all of a sudden it disappeared. It didn't freeze. It just literally just like went away, and I had to reboot. Not reboot. I just restarted Logic. I haven't rebooted since then because I was about to do the stream. So that makes me a little nervous, but I need to make sure that some of this East-West Play plugin is fully up to speed. Um, they've really started working more on the Opus plugin version, and so because I'm using the old Play, I don't know how reliable it is all the time. Okay, so it's, like I said, amazing. It's really fast. Does that make it better in any way, shape, or form? No, it doesn't. And I think that it's it's really just like a misunderstanding that some people have, that, that the tools will make your music better, and it's not true. I think I could make just as good a music on my Mac Mini and the Mac Minis I've had before that. I've been using Mac Minis for a long time. I really like Mac Minis, partially because I have all my monitors set up and I can just plug it in and continue working without having to change my monitor situation. But the Studio, even though it's not a mini, it fits kind of into that same thought process for me. It's like just a Mac Mini on some major steroids. And so I like the form factor. A couple of things I've heard a lot of are that the Ultra has noise. And I got nothing. I got nothing at all on mine. So maybe the delay was, getting some of that stuff worked out and fixed or something. But this thing has not made a whistle or a peep since I got it. And I'm fingers crossed that it stays that way. I don't know if people have said that it started later. I mean, that's really good. Um, cool. So, yeah, super impressive with that part of this. I'm excited. I just realized that, so if any of you are watching this, I don't think I turned off the overall central air. If it pops on here, then there may be a little background hiss in a second. But anyway, there's a few of you watching right now. Any questions that you're dying to know about this? I'll look in the chat in a second. I feel, just because of how little this is using, I feel like I could easily build an entire orchestra. Now, I'm not using an external hard drive. That's the reason I got the 2 terabyte drive. Not for projects. I'll keep my projects on a separate drive, but it's for all of the samples and the instruments, because um, the internal drive is just so good that you want to be able to use that. So I think, let me do this real quick. Black Magic. I haven't downloaded my disk speed tester yet, so let's get that real quick. And then I'll run a test just so you can see what I'm talking about here. Let's load up, select target drive. Probably was already selected, but let's just make sure. Oh, read only. Let's find the actual place where I can do this. Let's see. Mac Studio. I know. That's good. Let's see. My desktop is probably clean. There we go. So let me show you why I wanted all this stuff on the internal drive. That's the write times, and those are the read times. And it'll keep doing this till it's pink in the face. So let's stop it. Um, yeah, that's pretty snappy. It's enough for like pretty intense 12K footage. So it's going to be enough for audio samples, which is much different. I wonder which other drive. Extreme Pro, this is one of my solid state drives, which is a little full, but USB 3, not bad. But I mean, a factor of 10 slower than the other, right? And I mean, it's a good drive. It's not bad. It's small but snappy. It uses the latest stuff for like a little USB style drive, and it's good enough for all your libraries and things. But I mean, it doesn't even compare to what we're looking at with the highway. This is like a dirt road compared to the highway of the internal drive. So. And then a question about, have I used an audio interface to record audio yet with the Ultra? Not with the Ultra, with the Max, the Mac Studio Max that I had. I definitely had that hooked up to my interface. I have a Focusrite and one of the Steinberg ones, and then just like single microphones that are USB, like the one I'm talking to you on right now. This is one of the Rode Go setups that's being hooked in via USB-C into the computer. So it's an audio interface and it's working with it. But, you know, we have on campus, we just got Mac Studios for all of our studios, and we've been using them with interfaces for the past like a month maybe, and they work amazing. We've had zero issues. Our interfaces work equally well with Pro Tools, Ableton, and Logic, and we've had no issues or anybody complaining of crashing or any audio artifacts. It's just been working really well. So I will be hooking this up with my interface, just because I did use it with, I showed this in the last one, the Zoom L8, which is essentially a 12-channel interface into the computer. And so I use it with that. I plugged that in already, and it worked really well. I don't plan on, I use that more for the away from computer stuff, not the studio stuff, because I prefer the Focusrite, which has the 8 analog in and 8 analog out, so I can do things like inserts and record all of my synthesizers and stuff, and send stuff out to the synths if I want to. So, good question. What else are we looking at here? So, I mean, we're into the point now where these processors are maturing. I would say they're like in their teenage years. When I first got my M1 Mac Mini, it was definitely like the toddler years, and it was a hit or miss what would work and what wouldn't, and we didn't have workarounds for anything. And you know, I got the M1 when it first came out. I got the M1 with 8 gigs of RAM because I thought, you know what, I'm gonna be upgrading this to one of the newer ones when it comes out. I didn't realize it was going to be quite as long as it was, but that M1 with 8 gigs of RAM, I mean, it's still a beast computer for medium sessions, anything up to orchestral stuff, I would say, because anything else, it worked great on the M1, and the RAM was fine. I didn't ever really hit issues with that, except I was using the East-West Opus Orchestrator, and every once in a while, it would push right to the edge and we would drop some samples. So I'd have to freeze those tracks. But I mean, I got it to work and it was working. It was just every once in a while, I wouldn't know if there was a file that was playing or something. So had to really triple check that things were all there. Um, Otherwise, I mean, I never ever hit the top of the processor on that thing, not once. And so I could have kept on going on that box probably for a while, except the orchestral stuff. I wanted to be able to do some of the bigger projects again. I've got a couple things coming down the pipeline where I want to be able to have the full thing going real time without having to freeze every track and really push it. And I want to be able to do a lot of the other research I'm doing with the 3D 360 stuff. So um, that was still hard on the Mac 1 or the M1 Mac Mini. Too many of the same words in the same sentence when you're talking about these computers. So, we're expecting, and I say expecting pretty loosely, but I'm expecting, a Logic update any day. And we're due for a larger one in the next like 6 months. And so it's nice to be able to be ready to go for whatever that brings. Uh, I don't know how many of you follow like the GarageBand cycle, but the GarageBand cycle is really important because it shows us oftentimes what's happening with the Logic cycle. With a company that the main bread and butter would be the iPhone, and GarageBand being an iOS thing, it's an important thing to watch because that affects what we do. Anyway, GarageBand did have some content update just last week. They released a couple more live loops sessions for, it sounds like it's going to be used in store for some of their workshops that they do when they do demonstrations of the software. And there was a Katy Perry song that came out. They're really horrible live loop sessions. I mean, they use a fraction of what that tool is capable of doing. It's like every single vertical column has the same exact timing, same exact length. Everything's audio. There's no MIDI or instruments or effects or anything. And so it's like a really boring implementation of that, but they're still releasing content in this way. I mean, even though Katy Perry is a little bit of a, I mean, it's not like on the top 40s that much right this moment, or not, significant even in the pop realm. Um, by significant, I mean like doing like the cutting edge stuff in the industry right now, more in the safe spot of her career. It's still a big deal that Apple's like, you know what, we want one of your songs to put on our platform, and then everybody gets to download the stems for it and then remix it. I mean, shows kind of where Apple's head is at a little bit with this, and so um, I think that they're still pushing, getting more people on the iOS stuff with this, and then eventually they graduate up to Logic, perhaps, but um, Mac Studio was one of the biggest indicators that Logic was still important to Apple. Seeing how that whenever they were showing Mac Studio, it's like they're either putting Final Cut or Logic Pro on the screen and all the advertisements and stuff. And so I think that we're okay. We're not like in danger of losing this, but certainly there's going to be some things that are less popular for some of you coming down the road. In terms of like, ooh, this feels more and more like iOS than anything else. There was a question, do you expect next major Logic to require new Mac OS 2? So we're already at that point. I mean, it doesn't require you to be on the latest operating system unless you want all the features. So that's the thing. They'll probably make it backwards compatible for a bit, but you won't get access to all the features. They're starting to build in things that require the operating system in a tighter way, more so than I think that they were doing in the past. Spatial audio obviously is a thorny issue. not everybody's doing stuff in spatial audio. I see the industry pushing it so hard. It's like you'll read online about all the studios that are now mastering in Atmos, or they're mixing in Atmos, and it's like they want you to feel like, ooh, this studio can do whatever, come rent us. But the truth is, who, how many people are still not listening to things in Atmos? And even if you have the capabilities of it, I mean, if you have an iPhone and a pair of the Apple earbuds, you can most likely listen to things in Atmos, but does that mean you are? Um, I don't know. It's like, I wonder how many people are listening in Atmos and don't even know it, or who actively avoid it. It's like, it's cool, but I've turned off all the head tracking stuff on my headphones. I don't, it's like I'm walking around listening to music someplace. I turn my head. I don't need the music to shift its locational position. It's like I turn my head, I just leave the music where it is in my ears, and we're fine. So as a casual listener, I don't find all that stuff that it doesn't enhance my listening experience in the way that I think that they want it to. Do I think spatial audio is amazing? Yes, I think that it's better now than it's ever been, but I'm using it for very different things in my research than just mixing the latest pop tune in it. So, you know, we'll see. I'm assuming that it's going to continue to be a part of it since Apple's pushed it so much and integrated it so much. But, you know, for instance, the power of the Mac Studio Ultra in my mixing process and making things easier, faster, better is more important than whether or not I'm listening to spatial audio on my headphones. So it's cool. Is it like life changing? No, it's just another enhanced way of doing it. Um, I remember when I was at the university, we had like DVD audio. So it was on a DVD and it was surround sound audio. It was on a disc. You could play it in only special players. You had to, most of the time at that time, you had to have, 6 discrete cables from the player into the receiver, and then it would play out to the speakers. Same time that Super Audio CDs were out, and those took a special player. And I had a system that could handle it, and I loved listening to music in surround, and that was cool. Um, but nobody wanted it. It's why it's gone. You don't have the ability to buy really on a large scale any DVD audios or Super Audio CDs. Um, so that's kind of the way technology goes sometimes. Will spatial audio be that way? It's hard to say. I mean, we have a bigger push with Apple doing it than any time before. Um, but we'll see. I love that I can sit in the living room of my house with my Apple AirPods and put on a movie, right, on the TV. I have an Apple TV box. And when I move my head around, I get the surround sound audio track of the movie. So I don't have to have rear speakers. I can just, you put in the headphones and have that around me. And I think that technology is incredibly useful and amazing. It works really well. There's a small delay, but I think it's workable for most people, and it'll just get better and better. Uh, and I love that. I love that, the family can be off in the kitchen doing something else, or, someone could be working on homework and I can just like put those in and it switches to my headphones and I've got surround sound on the couch and nobody else is bothering me. So I think that there's a lot of good uses for this, but I think it's all kind of an interesting quandary. U101 says, have you tried other DAWs? Yes, I've tried all of the DAWs, and I use some of the other DAWs regularly. I teach at a university, and our main DAW is Pro Tools. So I've been teaching Pro Tools now for almost 20 years, and can use it just as well as anybody, probably better than most. FL Studio, I've created entire courses about how to use that. Studio One, I know well enough to know that I don't want to use it all that much, even though it has some amazing features. Ableton, I'd made a course for one of the earlier versions of it, so I know that one pretty well. I've tried Reaper. Um, oh, Cubase and Nuendo, I was a longtime user for many years. There's very few of the workstations that I haven't used. I was a beta tester for Bitwig, and I've used them all. And the one I come back and use is Logic. And the reason I do that is because it enhances my process instead of getting in the way of it. It's like getting a Stradivarius violin or and having the instrument bring something to the table. So many of the other ones are great for what they do, but this one like works with me in my creation process, and I like that. Do I use Melodyne natively? No. Um, they just announced that Pro Tools is getting ARA. Um, so they're going to be able to use Melodyne like that. I've used Melodyne over the years. I used Auto-Tune when it first came out, and right now, for almost everything that I do of my own, I use Flex Pitch, and it works well enough for everything that I do. Um, so I use that one for the moment. Cubase 12, it's your main DAW, and I run it on 18 core i9. I want to know how it would compare. I'm sure, Cubase is really well designed. I've always loved the Steinberg products. I think that they're high quality. They have a little baggage. Just like Logic has baggage and Pro Tools has baggage. Um, the software that I think has less baggage, Studio One, built from the ground up, in more recent years. I remember when Studio One first came out, and they started that software not from scratch. Nobody starts anything from scratch, it feels like, but they started it fresh, and so it runs really reliably. Reaper started more fresh, and they have people working on that aren't interested in carrying around baggage. That's cool. Pro Tools has baggage. Like I said, Logic has baggage, although Logic now doesn't have the Windows baggage, meaning anytime a team can program a piece of software for one computer type, then it's going to have less baggage, generally speaking. But I like Cubase. I think that with MIDI stuff, Cubase is one of the best. They have done some things that everybody else has copied, so that says a lot about a company. So go Steinberg. What do I want to see in Logic 11? I want to see in Logic 11 iPad compatibility of some sort. I don't believe Logic is ever going to the iPad. It doesn't make sense. Look at my screen behind me. How all of that stuff on a little screen is stupid. It doesn't work. It wouldn't work. I have no interest in doing it that way. What I want is to be able to send a project over to my iPad, work on it in some fashion, and then just say save and go back to my computer and continue to work on it, and everything is there. So I want some compatibility, so I have the portable form factor. That's what I'm interested in. I'm not interested in Logic on my iPad, but I am interested in compatibility of workflow between the two devices. Let's see, come on. Da-da. Are you looking into using Logic together with running audio MIDI iOS apps together on the M1 Mac? I do that quite a bit. I've made a bunch of videos on the IDAM Plus protocol, which is one of the ways to use like an iOS device with Logic. It's really cool. You can plug it in and make it a whole interface and run devices and send MIDI back and forth and send audio from the either iPhone or iPad into the computer. That I've been using now for years. And I have been messing around with the iPad apps that work on the computer, and it's too clunky right this moment, meaning you can't load them directly into Logic, so you have to run them side by side. The MIDI goes to them, but then the audio just goes out the interface or whatever's connected, and it gets really messy at that point. I wish that they would come up with a routing system so that the output of one of those apps that you load on your, like the Mac Studio, that you could route that directly right into Logic and just run those side by side. I think that it's possible. They just have to think it through. Cubase isn't best if it comes to optimization, but I run it since VST4, and if it can run 128 full strip VSTs, then I'm fine. Cool. And then, have you looked at GPU audio plugin development? Don't think Mac is supported yet, but it looks promising. I have been reading about this. So there's the new plugin format, and I mean, you don't actually want to hear what I think about it. It's going to be one of those things where Reaper will get there first, and then we'll never hear the end of it. How amazing it is. Blah blah blah. But well, I mean, why? I mean, yes, it's cool. Imagine running VSL on RTX cards. It's cool. It'd be really impressive, but um, I mean, I could run a session in here with 1,000 tracks on this particular computer, and every one of them will have different plugins, and it'll be fine. So, yes, it's cool. I'm interested to see where it goes. Do I think Apple is going to go there? Well, the truth is, Apple, with all the integrated chips that they're doing right now, I mean, we're already doing something similar, and that's why the M1 and the M2 stuff is so cool, is because they're rethinking how these things play together, just like if you were doing stuff on the graphics, on the GPU. It's be rethinking and taking power in a way that maybe it wasn't designed for originally, or maybe it was kind of designed, but we just weren't doing it that way. And so I think it'd be awesome. I think that there's a lot of possibility. I love companies and designers and programmers that look at a box and turn it sideways and say, you know what, maybe there's a better way of doing it. So I think that's cool. Let's see. Someone says, Zoya, hi. I have the M1 Mac, 8GB RAM, and using Logic. That's the computer I've been really using for the past 2 years. I wanted to upgrade to much higher RAM. Any tips? I want a desktop setup, but iMacs have 16GB limit. I'm so confused. Well, the Mac Studio Max can do like 64 gigs of RAM, and is a beauty. It works really well, and is more power than most people would need for the next, couple years. So, I mean, check that one out. It's not cheap. I mean, they're cheaper than the equivalent computer was like 5 years ago, for sure. But the Mac Studio Max is what I'm recommending to anyone who asks. Now that I've used both of the Mac Studio Max, which is the one I've got right here, all of the ports and stuff are nice. This is a really good option. And then the Mac Studio Ultra, which is what I'm using behind me here, that's the one that, I mean, it was like $4,000. So not cheap, but hopefully going to last for a little bit. And memory does work totally different. However, since we're still using Rosetta on so many things, it works about the same, meaning more is better. And in reality, what's happening is I'm not an expert. I've read all the same promotional materials that everybody else has read. But I can't go in there and actually be like, now here's the part of the chip that blah, 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 right? I'm not doing that. Here's what happens. Most software that's not designed correctly yet, not the non-universal stuff, is still having to access RAM. And when you have 8 gigs like on the Mac Mini, I had to keep like 30 gigabytes on my hard drive free because it was just essentially using that as a virtual extension. So when my main hard drive got fuller, everything acted a little bit differently, a little slower. And so I really had to do hard drive management to keep that free. Because the hard drive itself, I mean, is very quick back and forth. So it's a good RAM. Um, it's really good for that type of thing. And so one of the big concerns from everybody was, oh, if you're using your main hard drive as a RAM extension, these are solid state drives. You're going to start losing reliability because those drives don't last forever. They have a limited number of uses before they start plugging up. And so I never had that issue. My Mac Mini was never in a couple of years had any issues with hard drive failing or anything like that. And as long as I kept it mostly clean and used external drives, everything worked like a dream. And so I think that if you're having issues with RAM on a Mac 1, M1, 8 gigabytes for the RAM, then your issues are probably self-inflicted more than anything. But certainly, I mean, you all were, I haven't touched this in a little bit, but I mean, responsive. Those notes they're playing all the notes, they're pulling them out, they're putting them in memory and getting them out to the speakers. I mean, this is so unbelievably responsive, which is cool. Couple questions. I'm personally running Hackintosh since 2019. Cool. Hackintosh is, I've never met someone who ran a Hackintosh that didn't have a lot of war stories, and I'm not interested in war stories, so, but there's always something with those. And then Zoya says, my 8 gigabyte iMac is relatively new, so I didn't want to just put it away. Any ways on how to get the most out of it for now? And I already kind of answered that a little bit. Keep your main hard drive empty as possible and use external drives for everything. And not just any external drive. Make sure you're getting fast SSDs because there are such things as slow SSDs as well. And make sure that your drive is fast and your cables are rated for the same speeds, because USB-C connectors on the ends of your cables don't mean that it's USB 3. And you want at least USB 3 on all of those things. So make sure your cables, your drives are all rated at the same thing, and keep your main hard drive empty, and then your 8 gigabyte M1 will last you for a while. And then Daryl says, do you use OBS? And when I stream, I use OBS, yes. It's the software I love to hate. It does a good job. However, I wish that the color key filter for doing the green screen stuff was better. I mean, Zoom, which I teach with at the university, it does like amazing green screen removal. I mean, it's like one of the best real-time green screen removals. You don't even have to have consistent color across the green, and it works really well. This, I have to have like super consistent lighting for OBS, and it has to be like perfectly green, and then it works. Well, so because you asked, I think video capture filters, that should go to green right now. So there's my green screen. Let me turn that back on. Pretty well lit. Tried a Hackintosh for a while, but sadly it wasn't stable. And then you retracted a message, and then says, mine is an exception. Everything works just as it should and never had any issues. Works better than a real Mac. I believe you. I don't argue with anyone who does Hackintosh stuff, because to get that set up and to do that, either you bought a turnkey system or you know actually what everything does and put it together yourself. And both of those people types are usually pretty capable. But I know many people with war stories and who fight the good fight. Um, but that's not my bag for sure. I am much more interested in being like, hey, computer, turn on. Just having it run. And there you go, you're IT. So that means you do know what you're doing, and it's really possible for those who are experts. Um, I, besides my Mac Studio, I've got a souped up gaming computer that's Windows for, again, my 360 research, because Apple stinks with 360 and Windows doesn't. So I've got an Oculus set up, and you know, I know just enough to be dangerous with Windows. I mean, I've used Windows probably longer than I've used Mac, really. Yeah, probably more hours when I was younger on Windows. And so it's like I knew all the in and outs of that. But um, my family's first computer was an Apple II Plus. And my dad was a huge Apple guy, and I learned how to do all the Apple stuff long before I even knew what other computers were. So I speak Apple, but I can deal with Windows when need be. Yes, another comment. I'd rather focus on music now than tinkering with hardware. I agree. And then Daisy Shah says, one of my friends knows a guy that makes customizable computers using i7 or i9 for Logic Pro. It would cost me around $1,900. Shall I go down that route or invest in a Mac Studio? For the reasons I was just kind of saying, I really depends. If you know what you're doing and can troubleshoot or have a troubleshooting avenue, then great. Um, if you don't, then I would be hesitant. Just because there are a lot of things that can go sideways. Customizable computers. It makes me personally nervous, but that's just me. Let's see. Do you think Logic will ever bring back a chord track? So they had a chord track, kind of. It never worked. Not like it does in Studio One. Not like the chord features in FL Studio. Um, it wasn't. It was just didn't. It didn't do things that it could have. I think that they were like going down that road, and then someone was like, "Oh, this is gonna take a long time to make it work right. Let's just not." I mean, Apple loops were supposed to be like that, where if you change the key signature from major to minor, it would actually transpose it to a minor, and that never worked, right? So if they do, it's going to be a different implementation. So I don't know about the chord track. Um, it it never really came through with what it promised. Yuri Nator, you mentioned this on one of the previous streams. I don't know, Joe. Unless, I mean, I don't know. I know lots of Joes. Let me put it that way. I don't know who. Joemama, you were waiting to do this one the whole time, weren't you? I feel like I do know your mom, Yuri. Winup, I just want it to be able to recognize what I've played as I was noodling. So it does recognize what you're doing as you play it. Look at the top little bit there. So it does tell you the chords you're using still. It just doesn't analyze them into actual usable other stuff. Rodri Felicia. I have all Isotope plugins and Arturia V collection on my 8GB M1 iMac. Should I transfer them to an external SSD? I would for them if you just, I mean, depends on how big is your internal drive. If you have a huge internal drive, then and you still have 40 or 50 gigabytes free, then it doesn't matter. But if you're closing in on less than 40 or 50 gigabytes on your internal iMac drive, then I would put them on an external. And even then, I might put them on external just so that the main computer functionality isn't relying on virtual RAM on the same drive that you're getting your files and samples from. So yeah, I think I would go back to just saying external. As you play it, it doesn't work, but when I play back a track, it doesn't. I see what you're saying. That's true. What are those plugins that you're using now? This is the East-West Play. They have a new version, Opus, and I have been using Opus for like 3 or 4 years. I don't know if Opus. I've been using Opus since it came out, which was just like a year or two ago. But I've been using this, the Play version, for many years. And I love their stuff. I think it sounds good. I think it's usable. I think it works well. So all of the sounds are from that. Is it okay to crack plugins on Mac? No. I mean, do what you want, but I think it's stupid. Jerry Hatley, new Mac fully loaded as opposed to Mac Studio Ultra. Which is your choice for music only? New Mac fully loaded as opposed to Mac Studio Ultra. I don't know. I mean, there's so many options right now. You could run so much on a MacBook Air and be fine. Virtual RAM is kind of weird on Mac because physical RAM capacity doesn't matter. It always uses thumb. That's true. And I wonder if that's because, I don't know. I mean, I would love to talk to somebody who's an expert on that. If they're doing it so that you're always dipping in a little bit there in case you need to, if you run out of the physical RAM, if it like causes some issues, and so they're always like taking, just keeping it off of that to prevent issues that could cause like fatal destruction later. I don't know, but I did know you are right about that. Does running on Rosetta 2 or M1 make a difference? Minus 8. I use AutoTune Pro, which isn't available on M1, hence got to use Rosetta. I mean, most people are still running Rosetta. And Rosetta works really well. And U101, that's what my instincts would say too. I don't know enough about it. Well, we're going to wrap this up in a second. Awesome conversation from everybody. This is my favorite part of YouTube, is doing live streams right now and talking to people, answering questions, discussing, and yeah, I'm just like, this performance meter on this computer, running all of that stuff while at the same time live streaming. I mean, this doesn't get much dreamier than this. So let's pull the plug. Let's close this stream down. Any last thoughts? Rodri says, best third-party plugins to upgrade from the stock Logic ones. Depends on what you want to do. I think Logic has one of the best set of stock plugins of any software. Yeah, and best instruments and things, but there's always more that you can do with other things. Right now, I mean, I use a couple Waves plugins. I try not to, but I do use some Waves, specifically their headphone tracking system so that I can mix on headphones, and I really enjoy that system. And I use some Rhodes plugins for my 360 stuff. I use the East-West orchestral banks, which are really great. Um, I have all of the Eventide plugins. That's just me being nostalgic, though, because I used to use Eventide hardware, and it has kind of a aesthetic I like. Um, there's some Oka Sound ones, Soothe, which I really like, and oh, I, one of my favorites. I love Reason Rack in Logic. Reason Rack is one of my favorites. I pay monthly subscription for that. It's one of the few things I pay a monthly subscription for. Uh, they're cool. I don't use Isotope, even though everyone always asks me if I do. And I used to use Arturia, but they're on the dead to me list because they kept on. It's like they're more relentless about paying for upgrades than almost anybody. Waves and Arturia are like in the same boat, and their stuff was so buggy. They want you to pay for an upgrade before they fixed all the previous ones. And then I was talking to some of them at one point for a book I was doing, and a lot of companies send me stuff so I can, when I do the books, that they put it in there, and they were like, "Yeah, we'll send you that license," and then they send me half of the license, and then they never wrote back. That's I don't care. They don't have to give stuff for free. I'm not judging them for that, but it was their communication style was just like absent, and I don't like that. Don't give me stuff for when I'm doing books. I don't care. I pay for a lot of stuff too. But if you're going to like say one thing and then not respond and then kind of respond, that kind of thing for a company, it just rubs me the wrong way. Yeah, tons of free stuff out there. There's a lot of good stuff. Don't get fixated on the plugins though. That's one of the reasons why I like Logic. You can do almost everything you need to inside here. If you want to get into a career full of chasing software and updates, then do that. But geez, let's don't forget if you want to use this stuff to make music, then just make music and figure out the rest later. Don't go chasing. Um, yeah. Thanks everybody. I'm gonna end the stream. We like I always say, we do more of these. I give you about 5 minutes notice because that's about all the notice I have. But I will catch you on the next one, and go out and use Logic a little bit this week. Don't just like watch YouTube, except when I'm on. Then definitely watch YouTube and don't use Logic.